Okay, we had a little bit of a snafu there, but
Now
we're
I can
back.
hear you.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to welcome everyone. We are here with Dr. Cantu, and today we're going to do just a very short conversation on the VATRE, which is the voter approved tax rate election, or the penny swap. And that is taking place on November the 2nd. And I want to do a little bit of a disclaimer right up front. This is not all of the information. I mean, we could probably talk about it all day long. So there are many sources and many places that you can gather all your facts and all your information, including the district's website, which is probably the best place to go, wouldn't you say?
I would.
Yes. So today what I want to do is I really just want to focus on one thing, which is why the district is in the position of doing the penny swap. So I know that's a huge thing to overcome or tackle, but we're going to try. So go for it.
So it's always a multifaceted, you know, it's not an easy answer, but I can tell you there are two main things that have been occurring for a while. Mm-hmm. The first thing is back in 2019, the 86th legislative session, House Bill 3, it passed school finance reform and property tax legislation. And part of that was to reduce property taxes over time. And to do that, they applied what's called a compression to the M&O tax rate. And so for us, as property values go up, tax compression kicks in. And so for us, and that's on the M&O side of our budget, which is the day-to-day operations budget, which is what the VATRE is seeking to swap those 13 pennies from the INS side to the M&O so we can maximize our money where we're needing it the most right now. So with that 86 legislative in 2019, tax compression kicked in. And so if you looked at our M&O tax rate in 2019, right before that, it was $1.04. And then in 2020, it was 97 cents. And keep in mind, the lower this goes, the less revenue that is generated.
Right.
2021, it was 95 cents. And then for this year, the 21-22 year, it compressed down to 92 cents. So since 2019, we've gone from $1.04 down to 92 cents on the M&O side. So we're not generating as much revenue. So that's been a huge factor as far as that goes. Another thing that drives enrollment for districts or drives revenue for districts is enrollment. And I think we've seen over the last 2 years, particularly the last 18 months with COVID-19, we've taught, you see it in the news, enrollment's down in schools. And we've experienced that as well. In fact, last year we lost over 300 students, right? And so, losing students, that was almost $3 million.
Okay. And
enrollment is coming back, but it's not coming back as quickly as we would hope or expect. And so that's the reality. Many years ago, back when I was an administrator and teaching and coaching here, we were labeled a fast growth district. I mean, there was a time period where we were opening schools. It felt like every year 2 or 3 schools were opening up, right? In 93, we were a 1 high school town, and now here we are today. Mm-hmm. And so there was a lot of growth going on. And then several years ago, our enrollment slowed down and we were no longer considered a fast growth district. We just recently, they redid the definition of that, and we just barely creep over now into being a fast growth district. But COVID-19 again has put a huge stall on that. And enrollment is coming back, but it's coming back a lot more slowly. So those two things have been very, very impactful for us over time.
And I know that you had also some expenses from COVID that were a one-time thing that also created this deficit that you've got this year that you're facing looking into next year.
There have been a ton of some expected and unexpected expenses related to COVID. But there are some ESSER funds that come for those, but there are very specific things that you can spend those monies on. And so we want to make sure that we're being very fiscally responsible with the federal money that we're receiving, and we're spending it only in the ways that it can be allotted. And we also, because it is a one-time bucket of money, you don't want to spend that on anything that you need to sustain over time, right? And so you don't want to, if you go out and hire 20 teachers, which would be an incredible thing, you don't just pay for their salary one time, right? It continues. So we're right. And so these monies are, it's almost like dipping into fund balance. If you take $10 out of your savings account, it doesn't replace itself.
Right.
So that's the same thing with our fund balance. It's the same thing with these federal dollars. It's a one-time shot. But Lori, and I meant to say this earlier, this is not the first time that we've talked about a VATRE. And there are so many surrounding districts that have already passed their VATRE, right? We started talking about it actually back in 2017. But that's also the same year that we went out for and passed our bond election, which allowed us, one of those outcomes was the 3 new schools that opened this year. And so we talked about it then, but we really needed to focus on the bond and addressing the overcrowding down in the southern portion of our district. So we chose to focus on the bond and table the discussion of the VATRE at that time. Then in 2019, we started talking about it again. As, here we are again. And while we're inside trying to streamline and make cuts where we can, while we're still growing to some degree, right? It's trying to balance that. We started having that conversation again. We crossed right over into 2020 and COVID hit. And so we had to table that conversation again. So now here we are, third time coming back to the table to say, we really need to consider this. And prior to the board calling for the VATRE on August 10th, we had talked about a lot of things during the budget process. And we had talked about open enrollment, which a lot of surrounding districts around us are doing as well, because that does generate revenue.
Sure.
Right. With every student that comes, money comes as well. And that's why you're seeing a lot of districts open up their borders, right? Because it generates revenue. We did discuss that. And that was not a direction that we chose to move forward with as a district at this time. We looked at dipping into fund balance, but we maintained just a little over the recommended 3 months. I think we're just shy of 4 months of fund balance, which they want you to keep around that 3 months. It's recommended to keep just a little over 3 months of expenses, and we do that. And again, it's a one-time fix. We could dip for some things into fund balance, but the next year we're right back in the same boat. And we talked about disaster pennies, and we really thought we were going to land there. They work very much like a VATRE, and that is the direction that we were going, to be able to increase the M&O side of our budget and generate more revenue. However, in the middle of us moving forward in that direction, the state of Texas redefined disaster and removed pandemic as part of the definition. And so in the middle of the game, we had to stop and revisit again. But we're getting really good at pivoting, Lori. And so,
aren't we all?
We are. And so that is how we eventually landed back to the VATRE discussion for the third time.
Okay. And then I know that, I mean, I know you can't be real specific on anything, and I don't want you to, but I realize that if this does not happen, that there are ramifications of it. And I know that I've had people ask me, well, what have we done up to this point to try to cut back? I know that you've said that you've done that.
Yes. So lots of things, and I can kind of hit on maybe 3 or 4 big ones. Yeah. Because like you said, we don't have all day. We could go all day. Yep. One of the things that I think a lot of our staff probably sees and feels is for the last many years, we have been in the top 5 salaries in the Western Metroplex, as presented by UEA, who does a salary comparison for the Western Metroplex. Over time, and particularly in the last several years, as our raises have been smaller, the percentage of the raise that we're giving has been small. And that's one of the things that we've had to look at, and those hard decisions that we've had to make. Our raise this year, we gave a 2% raise. That was $5 million, right? And so the year before, we only gave a 1% raise. And as that's happened, we have now dropped out of the top 5, except for year 1. And we're down like, 11, number 7. And we've dropped down. So that's one way that I think as a community, they can see that over time, we've been able to give just enough raise to almost compete with the benefits that continue to go up, right? The cost of insurance, that continues to climb, where our raises are just barely covering that increase for our people. And so that's something I think that illustrates what we've been trying to do over time to try and get some of this, to try and streamline. An efficiency audit was just presented to the board Tuesday night. And one of the outcomes of that was that, so for our school districts, and for us in particular, for most school districts, around 80% of their budget is in personnel, right? It's in salaries and benefits for personnel because we're a people business. 83% of Mansfield ISD's, M&O budget is in salary and benefits. And one of the things that they showed, however, through the audit was that they took comparison districts. So demographically, they look like us. Size-wise, they're very similar to us. And they showed how they perform academically. And then they looked at their systems, their finance systems. So for instance, on general administration, so campus administration, district administration, all of that. In Mansfield ISD, we spend generally $191 per student on administration. Our peer districts spend $239, and the state average is $335.
Wow.
And so you can see how that's from us getting leaner and leaner over time. We just did a $400 million bond refund. That's something else that we've done to really try and save money. And that saved over $50 million. It's like, refinancing your mortgage. And so our business office has been really fiscally responsible in trying to look at everything that we can. We delayed the opening of our 3 new schools. That 2017 bond.
Yeah, there you go.
We delayed the opening. It's big. It's big because opening 3 new schools, just for the opening of them, there's several other costs that come with it, but it's $10 million.
Yeah.
Right. So we delayed that last year. If we had opened them last year, we would have been looking at a deficit budget. And so we've been doing lots of things along the way to try and crunch things down. And at some point you can still make small cuts here and there, but you're not going to be able to make any more of those large impactful cuts.
Right.
So
it's kind of like your home budget, cutting out the cable's not going to make a huge impact.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But, but we've been doing those things too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're anywhere that we can, but as we continue to look at all the things that make up our budget, there's partially funded mandates that are out there that we're having fund, right? Reading academies, full day pre-K. When you have half day pre-K, one teacher can teach 2 sections. When you have full day pre-K, you still want to teach all those sections, but now you need 2 teachers, not 1.
Yeah.
And so with full day pre-K, with reading academies, we've delayed those and tried to roll those out over a 2 to 3 year period instead of being able to do it all in 1 year. And we're lucky the state has given us the grace to do that, but we have definitely had to afford ourselves the grace to do that. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, so it sounds as though this is like the last thing, and that this has to happen. And if it doesn't, then you have to look in places that you really don't want to. And I'll just say it like that. I can say that. And that's kind of where we are. So it's real important that everyone pay attention. Go to your website, get the information. You've got lots of opportunities. I know that you guys are kind of going on the road. You've got another Facebook Live coming up.
October 5th.
Yeah, October 5th, where people can submit their questions.
Absolutely.
So there's lots of opportunities that you guys are giving everyone to get their questions answered. So that's a good thing. And then we just need to make sure that and I will say, everyone needs to go vote November the 2nd, but I appreciate your time. I know that it's detailed. I know that school finance is crazy, and I can't even pretend that I understand all of it. So,
hey, Lori, so you mentioned voting.
Yes.
If I could give just some factual information about the ballot language.
Okay. Oh,
I think,
yes.
Yes. I think as we are, like you said, we're going out on the tour, right? Trying to present as much information as we can so that people can really make an educated decision when they go out to vote. And one of the things that we are trying to educate everyone on is the ballot language. And we are bound by statute with the ballot language. We can only fill in 3 blanks. We can fill in what the overall tax rate will be. We can fill in how much that's going to increase on the M&O side, and we get to fill in how much revenue that generates. We don't get to tell the other piece of the story. So for instance, when we get to fill in that the tax rate is $1.40, will be $1.41, we don't get to say that that's almost a full 3 cents lower from this last year's tax rate, which was $1.44.
Right.
When it says that the M&O tax rate is going up by 16%, as along those lines, we don't get to say that there's an equal decrease on the INS side.
Yeah.
So we don't get to say that, and we don't get to illustrate what that $24.7 million in revenue actually would go for. But if people go to the website, if they come to any of our presentations, if they go to misdpennyswap.org, they can see the information about the ballot language and lots of other really great information that can help them as they make their choice.
Perfect. All right. Thank you for spending some time with us.
Appreciate
it. Okay.
All right.
Have a good one.
You too. Bye.
Mansfield ISD is currently in a position to maximize state funding and generate an additional $24.7 million in revenue through a tax rate penny swap. Mansfield ISD's revenue per student ranks among the lowest in our area. In some cases, the district receives as much as $1,300 less per student than neighboring districts. In Texas, school districts' budgets are funded by 2 different tax rates: a maintenance and operations rate, which essentially funds all operating expenses, including salaries, maintaining school buildings, student programs, and schools of choice, and an interest and sinking rate, which funds bond debt. In an effort to maximize state funding and provide more local control of district revenue, Mansfield ISD could increase its maintenance and operations tax rate by 13 cents with voter approval, which would increase the net operating revenue by approximately $24.7 million annually. This would also provide greater flexibility with how those funds are spent. That money would be used to maintain quality instruction, student programs, schools of choice, retain quality teachers, and uphold safety and security standards. The result would be that Mansfield ISD's interest and sinking rate would go down 13 cents, while the maintenance and operations rate would increase by an equal amount, 13 cents. This is a penny swap, swapping 13 pennies from the interest and sinking rate to the maintenance and operations rate. With your personal finances, you can use the money you budget for debt or expenses however you wish. If your mortgage payment was reduced, your additional money could be used for home improvements or to save for your child's college fund. In school finance, however, maintenance and operations funds can be used for anything to help the school district operate and sustain programs. But the interest and sinking funds can only be used for debt repayment and cannot supplement district operations or salaries. Mansfield ISD is in a position to lower the interest and sinking rates because of fiscally responsible refinancing and increasing property values over several years. The district will be able to make all of its debt payments with an interest and sinking rate that is 13 cents lower, and Mansfield ISD could still afford up to $300 million in bonds without raising the interest and sinking rate in the future. With the opening of 3 new schools in August, which were funded by the 2017 bond program, Mansfield ISD has the capacity to accommodate its current student enrollment. With voter approval on the penny swap, Mansfield ISD can bring in an additional $24.7 million in revenue without increasing the overall tax rate. Otherwise, the district is facing a $23.6 million deficit. The Mansfield ISD penny swap won't increase your total tax rate, but it will put more money back into your schools. Mansfield ISD residents can vote in this important election during early voting, October 18th through the 29th, or on Election Day, Tuesday, November 2nd. Learn more at misdpennyswap.org.